subsidy removal. Now, the Nigerian petroleum sector contributes substantially to the nation's economy. However, the potential benefits are diminished due to the existence of significant subsidies on imports of petroleum products. Subsidies on imported petroleum products are considered to be an important instrument for keeping fuel prices low and cost of living for many Nigerians. The cost of these subsidies, however, continue to rise year on year due to increased volatility in the world's petroleum and petroleum products prices, an increase in illegal exportation of subsidized petroleum products into neighboring countries. In order to address this, the federal government has secured an $800 million World Bank loan for fuel subsidy removal palliative. Minister of Finance, Budget and National Planning, Mrs. Zainab Ahmed, said $800 million was the first tranche of the palliatives to be disbursed through cash transfers to about 50 million Nigerians who belong to the most vulnerable category of the society. I introduced him earlier. Is joining me, Mr. Iniobong Usen. He is the head of research advisory at BudgIT Nigeria. I want to say thank you so much for doing this. We appreciate this.
Yeah, thanks, Tolu. Good afternoon, Tolu, and good afternoon, Nigerians.
Yes, it's really been a while. But let's get to this big discussion first. Subsidy removal. Maybe I should start on that note, Mr. Usen. What do you think about this removal as planned for June 2023, considering the fact that, we had a delay with the PIA for some 18 months and all of these moves are trying to straighten up things. But at the moment, do you think we can bite the bullet?
I mean, it's well overdue. This is something that should have ended more than 3 years ago. As it is, we cannot afford subsidy. We are borrowing to pay for subsidy. There's a lot of corruption with the subsidy, with almost half of what we import, being taken across the border. So it's not sustainable at the moment. We're not raising enough revenues to be able to pay for subsidy. So at this point, it's something that is long overdue. And we were expecting that, with the present administration, seeing that there was probably no political sort of tool to fight for, they were not running for office, that they would have taken that bold step to remove subsidy before they went out of, or before they left office. But pushing this can further down the road and having a new administration coming to, to buy this sort of bitter pill is something that I didn't expect the present administration to do. It's something that should have gone, long ago. We did a survey about a month ago, and we would put out that survey, the result of that survey in public. And the average cost of petrol across the Federation was about 350 naira. So if averagely people are buying petrol at the cost of 350, and we are still paying for subsidy, with the cost of 185, 184, it just tells you that, the subsidy is clearly a scam. Government has agreed or alluded to the fact that there's a lot of scam with the subsidy. Citizens are aware that there's scam with it. So why don't you just end it?
So why don't we just end it? Well, it could sound, I don't want to use the word easy, removing it. Considering the economic situation, what sort of palliatives do you think we need to institute, or federal government needs to institute in the medium, short term, long term to address this? You must agree with me that there's going to be a backlash, one way or the other.
Oh, definitely. And what happened with the Naira redesign policy? Everybody thought all hell would break loose, that there would be a complete breakdown of law and order. But in that period when, the Naira redesign policy happened, there was unrest at the beginning. But with time, people got used to the fact that, the cash wasn't available and people found alternative ways of, dealing. Where people were losing as much as 50% of their money by trying to withdraw. Some people were, giving as high as 50%. But all hell did not break loose. Then also granted, there were certain things that were supposed to have been in place long before now for these things to happen. This government had 8 years, and they are leaving office, and one of the 4 refineries are still not working. As it is, we are not producing or refining a single barrel of crude. And these are refineries that still incur recurrent costs. People are collecting salaries, they are maintaining costs, they are still buying vehicles and all of that. People are even getting promoted without those refineries refining a single barrel of crude. And so it was expected that those refineries by now either should have been working or should have been sold or concessioned to businesses that can run them. Then the issue of modular refineries, came along. Until date, those are the projects that have not still been able to come on stream to say, okay, locally we are able to refine XYZ amount of crude. That's not happening. If you come to the social safety net system, which I think is the crux of this particular debate, conditional cash transfers and all of that, there has been an accountability thing in the mix where Nigerians have continued to clamor for transparency in the process, having whoever these persons who benefit from the conditional cash transfers, having their information put in the public. And I think I align with such views. If you think you are going to take public money, taxpayers' money that is meant for everybody, then it shouldn't be a problem having your information in the public. Because at the end of the day, without having that information in the public, it's very difficult for us to track or to know exactly who is getting what and to what extent these sort of welfare programs, as they may be, are impacting the lives of the vulnerable and the very poor who these interventions were designed for in the first place. If you look at the objectives of the National Cash Transfer Program, it was basically to be able to take people out of poverty, improve health and educational outcomes, and to sort of increase school enrollment rates. But look at the indicators. This program, and this is the second phase of the program, the scale-up program. The first phase of the project was for between 2017 and 2022. And the total project cost for that was about $1.8 billion, even if about $500 million was eventually committed. I was looking at the numbers, and as at February 2023, over $400 million had been disbursed. Now, are we able to track the effectiveness of such loans? Because these are loans. These are loans that the country would pay back, even if it's over a long term. But if we are not able to track the immediate impact of this sort of borrowings, then are we not impoverishing future generations without having the value for money, in the current generation or within this current generation where these funds were disbursed?
Interesting breakdown there, Mr. Hussein. But let's stay with refining. There's been that argument that Nigeria cannot run this industry import dependent and deregulating, based on importation. That would definitely affect us. What's happening with FX and all of that. So it comes down to the issue of in-house or in-country refining, whichever works for you. And that comes to the Dangote refinery, which we all talk about. Let me just...
They had issues with accountability with those GOEs on how they are able to raise revenues for government and even remit such revenues. And so government has proven largely that it doesn't have the capacity to be able to run any business it has established for the purpose of generating revenue for the country. So one would have expected that these refineries long ago would have been concessioned to the private sector to allow them run, make profit, but then you would expect efficiency in the sector. Not this system where, time after time, there's turnaround maintenance with huge funds that Nigeria necessarily doesn't even have, would borrow for this, and we are getting zero value for money. This has to stop.
So I was saying that if you hear, can you hear me clearly, Mr. Hussein? Good. I was asking you, if you can hear me, I was asking that will that refinery make any impact? Because many say that the same refinery will still need to buy
Hello, Tolu, I can
crude.
hear you.
Can you hear me now?
Definitely, I can hear you.
Good. So I said, many say that refinery might not be the entire solution to this problem. That is where I'm actually headed. That more might need to be done with regards to refining. So are you talking about concessioning other government refineries to be at par with the private one we expect somewhere in Lagos?
Oh, definitely. If you are concessioning, it's going to run as a private enterprise, meaning it will be run for profit. But then it would save governments that whole revenues that should have been utilized in other critical social sectors like health, education, providing support for small and medium scale enterprises, rather than losing these revenues in trying to turn around those refineries. So yes, the more private players you have playing in that space, the more efficiency you would have in the sector. Over time, prices would balance out based on demand and supply.
That's what many will say. But let me also play the devil's advocate and tell you that diesel has been deregulated for as long as when? It sells for as much as 850 naira today. Kerosene has also been deregulated. It sells also very much on the high side. Maybe that's the fear of many Nigerians, that PMS might also sell as much. Someone even came out last week to say to sell as much as 700 naira. I don't know how they came about that calculation though.
Oh, definitely. I mean, the price of PMS will be determined by the price of crude. If you have crude doing as high as $100 per barrel, you would expect the price of the constituents of crude to be equally high. You would have to benchmark that against what the price of the product is doing elsewhere. If you are saying diesel is selling for as high as 800 right here within the shores of Nigeria, you'd have to check outside Nigeria, what is it selling for? So the things with deregulation is that it would reflect market prices, meaning that whatever the market thinks the product should sell for is what it would sell for based on the price of crude at the end of the day.
Well, we'll still try to connect with Mr. Hussein, but a very interesting conversation around subsidy removal. I have some analysts that have maintained so hardly that before this is removed, a lot needs to be done. Mr. Hussein, you're there. You were making a point.
Oh, yes. I was making a point to say that it's even more important that more efforts need to be geared towards improving human capital development so that there's more productivity, the income levels of people, are further improved for them to be able to even afford these commodities. As against subsidizing these commodities, where, there was a report that was released in 2001 where it was revealed that only 3% of the poorest Nigerians benefit from this subsidy. And you find out that the bulk of the Nigerian poor do not have access to, quality health services, do not have access to quality education, which these resources that have been used to subsidize these products would have been, utilized for in the first place. So there's a crowding out effect. Resources that should be used in areas that would directly affect the poor is rather used in subsidizing products that the poor do not generally benefit from.
Well, it's a running story, and definitely we'll keep a tab on this and see how it all plays out there. I must thank you so much for your time, Mr. Iniobong Usen, head of advisory and research at BudgIT Nigeria. Thank you so much for making sense of the subsidy issue and, of course, as it has to do with the palliatives and what we expect moving on. We'll have this chat again because it continues to run. It's topical. Anything that has to do with fuel is a security issue, and it's very important. Thank you for your time.
Yeah, thanks for having me, and have a lovely day.
All right, then. Well, an interesting conversation there, as usual.